Hello, and thank you for joining us today. Before we dive in, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. My name is Elisa Zanola, and I'm head of events for the Fashion Scholarship Fund. As many of us are very familiar with Zoom at this point, there are some great features that we'd like for you to utilize. One of them is the comment box. Feel free to send chats to your panelists or fellow attendees, as well as the Q&A box. As questions come to mind, we encourage you to submit them, and we'll get through as many as possible during the Q&A segment of the session. And now I'd like to introduce our Executive Director, Peter Arnold.
Thank you, Elisa, for that introduction. Welcome everybody who's tuned in tonight to one of 4 sessions that we are devoting this summer to each of our 4 case study disciplines in an effort for you to learn a little bit more about the discipline from experts that we've brought together tonight, as well as to hear from an alumnus who competed very successfully in this case study discipline and the author of this year's case study prompt. So I'm very grateful to SAP, who's our partner tonight and who's underwritten tonight's event. And I'm very pleased that SAP has shared with us Robin Barrett-Wilson, who is tonight's moderator and the Industry Executive Advisor of Fashion at SAP. Welcome, Robin. Thanks for moderating. Robin's joined by Jody Kahn, who's the Senior Director, DMM, for Women's Designer Ready-to-Wear at Neiman Marcus for both stores and online. Welcome, Jody. Jody is joined by Kim Ronsky, who's the Assistant Vice President, Planning and Allocation at TJX. Welcome, Kim. And as I mentioned, Michaela Nolman is a 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020 winner of an FSF scholarship, so I can think of no better presenter on merchandising and the case study and how to navigate it successfully than Michaela. Welcome, Michaela. And Michaela, as I mentioned, is joined by Jenny Smuss. Jenny is a 2008 FSF scholarship winner from Kent State University and author of this year's merchandising case study prompt. So Robin, I'm going to hand the conversation over to you and your very deft moderating skills. You can take it from here.
Thank you, Peter. Appreciate it. And Elisa, I'm really excited to be here with everybody. So I'm just going to dive right in. So as you may or may not know, certain questions were pulled from the current case study prompt that you all are going through, and there's going to be more coming from Michaela and Jenny during the second segment of the session. But before we get started, I think it would be really great to hear from Jody and Kim, just explaining your function within your organization and you know, what is the focus when it comes to product merchandising versus planning side of merchandising, which is what Kim does. So Jody, why don't we start with you and tell us a little bit about that product merchandising role.
Perfect. Well, thank you for having me today, and I'm really excited to be a part of it. I've been at Neiman Marcus for 13 years, so definitely very passionate about the industry and about Neiman Marcus. But in my role as the DMM over Women's Designer Ready-to-Wear, you know, really responsible for selecting with my buyers. I have a team of 5 buyers that work for me. All of the assortments in all of our store locations as well as online. And really helping to kind of set the trends and understand what the consumers are after, really utilizing both the art and the science behind retail, which I think is what kind of excites me the most, is that there's definitely that passion of, oh, we love product and it really is emotional, and we'll get more into that later, but also the science behind what the data says and, you know, what our customers are really looking for. So while on the merchandising side, you know, responsible for all the product that gets into the stores, you know, we really make sure that everything has a purpose and is going to be a meaningful part of the assortment when the customers are visiting both Neiman Marcus stores and .com.
Great. You have your hands full.
I do.
So Kim, if you could just share a little bit about what you're doing at TJX.
Yeah, happy to. And again, thank you for having me as well. So when we talk about planning and allocation at TJX, our mantra is getting the right goods to the right stores at the right time. So for those who don't know, within Marmax, which is the group that I support, which is TJ Maxx and Marshall stores, we have over 2,400 stores across the country. So our teams are responsible for allocating merchandise to all of those stores. So I manage 3 planning managers and their teams who are really responsible for the ins and outs and the details that go along with ensuring that that happens. And really that means knowing the product. What is our ownership? What are our buyers buying? And also partnering with them on what's to come, and really doing some great market research to know what the upcoming trends might be in their given area. As far as knowing the right stores, we break our stores down into zonal regions, really based on climate. And we also analyze stores based on their sales volume, and we really pay attention to the individual store needs. So our teams are responsible for making sure that they're looking at that data to get the right product there. And then lastly, the right time. So looking at entrance and exit strategies, for example, back to school. How are we getting back to school product out by zone or region, knowing that different parts of the country start or close schools at different times. So we're really responsible for making sure we look at those pieces of the business. All of this is done in partnership with our merchant partners. So my team works more closely with buyers. I work more closely with the MMs and with our GMMs, building our sales and inventory plans for the season. And we're constantly revisiting those plans to make sure that we're meeting consumer demand and that we're able to be flexible and kind of change strategy in the moment, again, to meet consumer demand, and also to be mindful of market trends that are happening and market availability that's out there.
Great. Complex, right? So it is an art and a science. So interesting, this kind of leads into the next question. So, within the case study, the applicants needed to really develop an allocation plan for their chosen retailer, in-store and e-commerce. So, way back when we didn't do that, but we do that now, right? We always kind of siphoned everything off and made it separate. So now you have to think of everything holistically. So within your respective organizations, and Kim, I'll go back to you. When you're thinking about an allocation plan, what kind of insights are you thinking about, and what are you kind of diving into to make sure that the allocation is correct?
So I would go back to a little bit of what I just shared around, getting things to the right place at the appropriate time. As far as e-commerce goes, I can't speak specifically to that. I'm not involved with the .com site. But I do know, they put things up on the site similar to how we would ship to stores. And for TJX, it's really about creating a treasure hunt in the store for the customer. So for us, certainly we're looking at inventory levels, what we think our sales projections will be, and the store turnover. And it's a similar concept on the site. So in our stores, we turn our inventory over at least 12 times a year. So every month our store's inventory completely flips, which is quite different from traditional retail. So we have to take all those factors into account as we're allocating.
Yeah, that's a busy store. So Jody, how about you when it comes to allocation?
Yeah, quite the opposite from what Kim's talking about. So it's nice to have a totally different perspective. We wish we could turn even 6 times a year, but that's certainly not what happens at Neiman Marcus. Obviously, curating the assortment, and we are also over the allocation process as well. Our buyers actually allocate to all of our stores. And I think it's one key differentiator at Neiman Marcus compared to a lot of other retailers, where we have the ability, and I know some of our customers firsthand, their names, what they like to wear. I know all of our sales associates. So it's really specific that we allocate by door based on what Kim was saying with climate, and when we know certain events are happening in certain cities, philanthropic events or the symphony or the orchestra, things like that are also really important to our business, which is very different than some others also. But looking at what we know, what the demand might be by market is a little bit different. During the pandemic and post-pandemic, Texas and Florida have been incredibly important versus some other areas on the West Coast have come back a little bit, more delayed. So I think, when we're looking at allocation, we're definitely taking into account just various different options based on what the consumer might want in that area. And then, I am over our website as well for designer area. And, it is just looked at as another store. It's just the biggest store by far that we have. So when looking at depth, and SKU count and the assortment, we can really provide a much wider assortment for that customer, because the customer traffic is obviously much higher online than it is in store. So, the depth might be only, to Kim, this will sound crazy, but 5 units for a store versus online might be upwards of 20 units for a store, because we know what the demand is online is much stronger. And then certain brands obviously are more sought after than others, where we may have 100 units for online. So really looking at, again, that art and science of what does the product tell us and what does our emotional side tell us, but also how much opportunity is there online, and really how much can we sell. And we always like to say how high is high, and how many units can we really get through on our website.
So I wanted to just kind of dive into a little bit more of the idea about the pandemic cut consumer and the shopping habits. And this is, I do think it's really great that there's 2 totally different type of retailers on this, because I think you're going to get a really good view of the different things that people think about. So when you were thinking about, what was happening with the pandemic and thinking about omni-channel merchandising plans, was there anything that you could kind of relate to in the past that maybe you had done before, or anything that you could pull from, or was this completely different?
I can jump in first. I feel like this is something, like I said, I've been at Neiman Marcus for 13 years. And while I was there during the recession and, in 2008 and, lots of different times, this was definitely something I think that was really unique. And we're still learning how the customer is going to respond. I think right now women's is finally coming back, and we're really excited to see, this idea of like revenge shopping, and it's a real thing, and they're certainly coming after it, and we're here for it, and we want to make sure we have the inventory. But I feel like it was something totally different. But what we really did have to focus on, to your point, Robin, was online, because we knew that everyone could shop online at any time. And we already had so much traffic prior to the pandemic truly being done on a phone. Now it really skyrocketed, and women that never would online shop, they really loved the customer experience in store. This was something they had to adapt to, and so we really needed to make sure that online experience was seamless, and we were offering them just as much of a perfect luxury experience on the web as we would in person, without being able to wine and dine them in store. So
sure. I've heard a lot in, kind of what's out there in the news, if you will, that, it's going to be like the Roaring 20s, right?
Oh, so, yes.
Everybody's going to be back with like this revenge and just, be out and about and buy an outfit for every event that comes up, and makeup events and all of those types of things.
Yes.
So I think it's going to be really interesting to see. So for you, Kim, I know you've already touched on a lot of different things, but, the majority of your sales are coming from stores. So how did you guys shift a little bit and navigate those kind of challenges?
Yeah, so I think the first thing was really focusing on customer and associate health and safety. TJX has made sure that was the priority from the beginning. So to your point, we had to close all of our stores for a period of time, and we actually had to shut down the website as well, because we had to close our warehouses. So both places had to be shut down for a period of time. As we reopened, as we focused on the health and safety piece, we had to look at our floor space, and we had to create more floor space to allow for social distancing. We had to close our dressing rooms. We added a greeter at the front of the store to help with sanitizing carts, offering a mask to those who wanted to come in. We wanted people to feel like it was a safe place to shop. So that was a really great, big priority for us. And I think it continues to be, and that's kind of an evolving thing, as fingers crossed, we're kind of coming out of this. But TJX is also global. So Canada, we still have stores closed, and in the UK, we still have stores closed. So it's ongoing, but again, I think we're seeing, thankfully, we're headed in the right direction, and we'll continue to evolve what those practices look like. And then from a consumer demand perspective, we had to, the beauty of the TJX model is that we're very flexible from a a product standpoint. We always have liquidity to change what our floor looks like and to offer the customer what she wants. So we were able to quickly respond to, she was buying more home product than ever. She was buying loungewear and slippers. She was no longer buying her career wear. So we really focused on giving her what she wanted. So as soon as we opened our doors, we were able to respond pretty quickly and be active in the marketplace, scooping up goods to get her what she was looking for.
So there really was a pivot right in the middle of the, I'll call it the season, although it was like a whole year, of the focus on the product that you all were carrying in the store and really making a shift. So on top of that, you had to reduce how many fixtures you had in the store. So really making an adjustment and understanding what kind of allocation needed to be done was probably long nights and early mornings, I'm sure, for you all. So, but TJX did very, very well. So you all obviously tackled that well. So that was great. So from Jody, from your perspective, that kind of shift, being in the luxury world, I believe both TJX and Neiman's did the buy online pickup in store, but was there anything else that was innovative that you can share that, perhaps you all introduced that you never thought you would do in the past?
Yeah, one thing I was thinking about that we did that I was wildly successful, really a niche idea, but something that I think is really exciting is that we did curbside Santa, which, Neiman Marcus is known for having the most beautiful Santa Clauses in our stores every year. And, we really wanted to still be able to offer that to our customers and their families, as it's been something we've been around for over 100 years that we've always offered. And so we actually had all the curbside, birthday parties and all the things that we had throughout the last year. We kind of adapted that to how could we make it work for Neiman Marcus. And we had a Santa Claus in almost every store in every city that we're in, giving gifts and, taking Santa lists, doing that all curbside. So really, not a way to drive necessarily additional sales, but just to, keep Neiman Marcus in mind, as that was always a family event and something that Neiman's was always very proud of. And when I was thinking about this, it was something I feel like really differentiated us throughout the last year. That was just a really special thing. And I don't think any other retailer kind of took it in that direction during the holiday season. But of course, we had all the traditional curbside, which we actually had pre-pandemic. It just really was not utilized nearly as much. And we still have it in our stores, curbside option for pickup. And we'll continue to have that so that everyone does feel safe and comfortable kind of coming back into the stores. But I would say that's the one thing that really has stood out that we kind of did differently than some of our other key competitors.
And so when you thought about merchandise for, Christmas or holidays of last year, so a shift in assortments?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
people weren't wearing ball gowns, right? So
yeah, to Kim's point, more slippers, lounge, athletic clothing. I think the one thing that really was surprising was denim, because I know a lot of us were wearing more of elastic waist pants maybe than, a full button fly. But our denim business was incredibly strong throughout the entire pandemic. And I actually don't see that going anywhere. I think, we're still always, I think, going to want to have those elements of comfort, but just more elevated and a bit more refined than maybe during the pandemic where it was full on lounge sets. I think, that element of denim, but just a great top, and knitwear has continued to be incredibly important. And so many designers are including knitwear in their collections that never even offered knitwear before. It was not a huge piece. And now they really have understood and been able to see where the gaps in their assortments were, and really pivoting, off of gowns and dresses and jackets and tailored suits and into more, day wear, but day to night. And if you are going into the office now, maybe just for a day or for a meeting, that you still feel polished and put together, but, not quite in that full, suit that someone may have worn pre-pandemic.
Right. Yeah, all of us who work from home, I think we saw a huge shift between, people being very casual to now all of a sudden, what's the right shirt to buy for Zoom, right? And I thought about this morning when I was getting ready. I'm like, wait, oh no, I can't wear that. I have an event tonight. I've got to. So definitely top of mind, right? You want to be sure that you're well.
Yeah, we coined it the Zoom top, and I can't tell you how many, feathered, ruffled, shoulder, embellished, and then on the bottom, the women tell us they're wearing their Lululemon leggings or their, Nike shorts, but they have this very expensive embellished blouse on because that's what's become so important to their, wardrobe.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Kim, to kind of drive some traffic to the stores, was there anything interesting that you all at TJX did that really stood out, just to get everybody not maybe so afraid and really to get in there and start shopping?
Yeah, so we actually don't do curbside pickup at TJ Maxx and Marshall, actually at any of our stores. So I just wanted to clarify that. But we do allow, if you buy online, that you can return in store, and that existed prior to pandemic. So that continued all the way through. I think, again, focusing on the health and safety, that was probably our number one thing, was ensuring that people felt like it was a safe place to shop. And one thing that we did was we shortened our store hours. I think a lot of people did that, but we allowed for that first hour of the day to be dedicated to people who were more immune compromised, so elderly or for other reasons. And again, I think that was a practice that some other retailers took as well, but that was a focus for us to make sure that we were allowing space for everybody to come in and feel like it was a safe place to shop. And we did see similar trends and some surprising ones too. Beauty stood out pretty early on. I think people all of a sudden were seeing their face all the time on Zoom, as opposed to like not seeing themselves, and they took more care to do their makeup a little bit more, of their hair. And within the loungewear business, we saw that bras took off in a major way. So, it could have been a shift to more comfort as opposed to, traditional structure. But we also saw the more obvious ones too, like luggage slowing down. So we made those adjustments.
Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but I've invested in all sorts of things for the office, right? To make sure the Zoom face is good. So we just have a couple more minutes. So, I think you guys have really touched on all the factors of, when you're addressing the needs of what happened during the pandemic and the consumers out there. So now, we're moving along. As you mentioned, Kim, there are other parts of the world that, unfortunately are not doing quite as well. But, for the US, what's kind of the thought process? So we'll start with you, Kim. What is it that you all think for the holidays, for example?
Yeah, so I think it's ever changing, but I think we're really hopeful that things are going to look really strong. I spoke to back to school earlier. We think that this could be, one of our best ever. Kids are actually going to be going back to school this year. So we've already started, distributing some of that product. We think that parents are going to be really the ones doing the high fives to each other on this one. So they're going to be out and about and ready to get their kids out the door for school. So we think that will be great. And I think for the holidays, we think it will be, we are a gift giving destination. We always have been. But it will be a continued focus this year. And we do anticipate that it will be a very strong season, especially as store capacities will be full this year, whereas last year we were not able to be at full capacity. So that will be a big difference when we're looking at our FY21 results. But yeah, I think it's an ever changing. Sorry?
And your hours will be extended again.
That's right. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah. That's perfect. So Jody, we'll end with you because everybody loves the Neiman Marcus holiday book, right? So
yes, we're working on it right now as we speak.
That's awesome. I can't wait to see it. Even though I don't get to buy a lot from it, I do love to see it. So
it's a work of art just in and of itself without even being able to buy anything. So, but different from Kim, I mean, she's, we're a gift giving destination, of course, as well, but really, I think this holiday, we're going to be the destination for event dressing. Everyone, even starting now, but certainly going through the holiday season, every reason is going to be a reason to really dress up. And you can see that in the designers' collections, the amount of, party dressing and separates and actual dresses and sequins and embellishment is the most I've ever seen in, I can't tell you how many years, but I think we're really expecting everyone to be, so excited they can be with their families and friends and really be able to get together and do those things that we were not able to do last year. So I think event dressing is certainly something that we will be standing for this holiday season. And then additionally, you know, we call it our kind of resort delivery that delivers, you know, in November and December. And this year also, a lot of our clients will be able to travel again. And I think that vacation and that vacation wear and our little kind of resort shops that we put up in November and December will also be a key piece to our kind of, you know, holiday business, whether it's like cover-ups or swimsuits or just like these whimsical, fun, happy prints and things that we just really no one was buying last year that will be different than, you know, going forward. So I think there's a lot to look forward to, but like Kim said, you know, we're still learning every day, and you know, we're trying to figure out what that looks like for the customer and just make sure that we're meeting her her needs throughout the season. So, but excited for holiday, and I know that we all are waiting for these big vacations and holiday get-togethers. So
it's so true. It's so true. I'll just, before I turn it over to Alyssa, I'll just say I was at the Terry Lundgren retailing event in May, first time I got to travel for work. And one of the things that he said during the event was, you know, we can't really predict what customers want, right? We just can't. And we do our best, all the data behind it and all that machine learning and all those types of things. But in the end, the customer will tell us what they want. So thank you both for the insight. Really, really appreciate it. And I'm going to turn it over to Elisa, and she's going to share her screen and we'll get into the case study.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, Robin, Jody, and Kim. Now turning it over to Jenny and Michaela to present on the deck.
Hi, everybody. As Peter and Lisa said, I'm Jenny Smoss. I'm a 2008 scholar, and I've been a judge since 2010. So I've been judging all the different levels of the applications from the Jeffrey Bean, well, it was Jeffrey Bean then, so but the higher level scholarships as well. I'm a committee member and also the prompt author for this merchandising scholarship prompt. So and I'm so happy. Thank you guys all for joining with us. It's a huge testament to your commitment to wanting to pursue the scholarship and your futures with our industry. And that's really what this whole thing is about. It's a huge part of where FSF comes from, is getting the next and brightest. So thank you guys for joining us and taking the time to learn a little bit more with us. So just kind of starting off with the first slide here. And I think it was such a great introduction. Again, thank you ladies so much for offering your time and your expertise as well. And it was a great introduction to exactly what this prompt is about. And all of you got to get some real world thoughts on what is happening when we're approaching the global pandemic as people in the industry, and how we've had to kind of react and figure out, you know, what the consumer wants. They're in that huge push towards more of an e-com thing, people shopping more online than they were before, and how do we approach that as a go forward? So that's a huge part of what this prompt is about. It's really just to figure out a original and creative way to make sure that you're addressing the changing consumer mindset that's coming out of the pandemic, and how do you utilize that in the way that you're allocating and coming up with your collections. So when you look through that, we'll just kind of like run through, but so it says to create the online and in-store merchandise campaign that appeals to consumers in this changing retail environment, which is exactly what we're talking about. So just think about all the changes that we've gone through in the past year. And then one of the big important parts is when you're picking your retailer, think about it very thoughtfully. You know, your favorite retail might not be the right person to pick for this. I think it needs to be somebody, what we're really looking for is to pick someone who has not quite made this jump and change yet. So for you to come up with a plan would mean a lot to the judges, that you're thinking ahead and figuring out a solution for a retailer that could applicably do it in the real world. And then also always remember, you need to have a publicly traded company, which would be a big benefit, and it must be part of what this prompt is. So just make sure when you're doing your research and picking your retailer that they are publicly traded, so that you can get those fiscal numbers in for the latter part of the application. And then also we're really looking into this year because of the way things have changed in the pandemic. As our lovely panelists said, we are seeing a change in what people are being drawn to in terms of beauty, accessories, home, and a lot of other things. So don't feel like you have to stick to apparel. I think there's a lot of growth possibilities in those other areas. So feel free to go there as well, and we encourage that. And I think that's the most of the things that we're kind of going through here. But again, I think really think about how you're addressing the different consumers, the consumer needs. Is it niche? Is it something special? As I said, Neiman Marcus has these beautiful embellished pieces, and TJ Maxx has a little bit more of the core and everything else. So you have to kind of look at where you're going to cover the broader base of your consumer needs as you're looking at your assortment as well. And then, as everybody was also discussing, it's the curbside pickup. Is it returns? You can do in-store returns for from e-com. And I think that that's a huge part of what we need to see from you as well, is trying to find a solution of the pre-sale pickup delivery experience is really big. And that was one thing that when I was researching doing this prompt, that there were a lot of conversations about, is that the online experience was wonderful, but the post pickup experience was not. So we need to make sure that we're looking at we need to make sure we're looking at that full spectrum. So I think that kind of just covers that whole page. Just make sure you're looking at the grand picture and really thinking about what retailer can really benefit from this thought process, and how to really be impactful for a broader consumer base and start to finish. Okay.
Okay, hi everyone, I'm Michaela. Nice to meet you all. So I will be talking about the identifying a retailer, and what Jenny kind of already touched on is how to find that retailer. And I'm sure by this point you've been thinking about who you would like to choose, along with making sure that your company or brand or retailer is a publicly traded retailer. Is also important for me from my perspective, was making a SWOT analysis. Kind of what Jenny touched on is, if you're choosing a brand that is already doing really well in the e-commerce and kind of combining that brick and mortar experience, that you're going to have a lot harder of a time to persuade the judge that your idea is actually going to work and grow the company. So on this first left bullet point about the product assortment, merchandising, and distribution strategy, we kind of already touched that in the beginning with Robin and Jody and Kim kind of talking about that assortment plan. And to kind of really drive that home is, for the assortment plan, it's really important to look at that fiscal trading thing at the fiscal year during the season, because that will really help you decide on where you should start. Some fiscal policies show you that this company had more in e-commerce before, and then maybe had less in brick and mortar, kind of switching around. So kind of looking at that fiscal report will really help you decide where you need to start on that COGS and that margin goal, and the SKU plan of how you would like to pursue the coming 6-month plan, which we'll talk about a little later. So then that develop the allocation plan, kind of talking about that same thing, is making sure that the numbers that you're pulling from for this assortment plan already are combined in what this brand or retailer looks like. So again, this public report is super important, because you can't just be pulling random numbers and thinking, oh, this store, is having 20 units and maybe you're incredibly off. So making sure to look at that fiscal report and pulling these numbers and kind of building off that to make that assortment plan accurate and help grow on the campaign that you would like to make for this case study. And then going over to that omni-channel launch plan. I think this is incredibly big now, and kind of during multiple generations, is that like using Snapchat and TikTok and all those kind of e-commerce kind of platforms is definitely a way to kind of boost up your ads, and showing customers and kind of the word by mouth, but over the screen, is very important for this omni-channel launch plan. And I feel like it always has been for the past couple of generations. So thinking about how that product time launch say you're selling backpacks, you'd want to sell that in spring, summer to hit that September market date. So focusing on when you're selling and when you're putting out this launch is really important to building that omni-channel launch plan. So then, as you can see in the samples here on the recipient that they presented, they had different online marketing channels, which is a major factor in today's generation, like I mentioned, and also including the fiscal reports percentages that show how much e-commerce and brick and mortar they have sold previously will really help you build on if you should promote more towards social media platforms versus campaigning just to, like, say, swipe up and shop in store now versus swiping up and going directly to the store for that e-commerce experience and buying through e-commerce. So kind of seeing how much inventory you need between the e-commerce versus brick and mortar will really help you decide on how to launch your plan.
And back to me. So, and leading back into talking about our consumer again, it's consider your target customer. And a lot of this is kind of touching again on what I was just talking about. I think that one of the most important things when you're trying to hit your consumer base is the key factor is always growth. You want to broaden your consumer base. You want to hit more customers than you were hitting before, and without losing the customer that you were focusing on before. So you want to make sure that everybody feels that their identity is seen, but that you are getting a broader consumer base, and to get that white space consumer that maybe the retailer wouldn't have. And just make sure that when you're talking about your target customer, just think about what makes the most sense for that retailer in general. And then, as Michaela had just said, what are the marketing tactics that you would use for a successful launch of your pandemic, post-pandemic product line and omni-channel merchandise plan? This touches exactly on what she was saying, where now everything on TikTok is a huge driver. Everybody said, I bought it because TikTok made me, so people are seeing things on TikTok, people are seeing things on Instagram. It's in all of our feeds on Facebook, Instagram, everything. We're always getting blasted with the different ads and things. So you really have to think about that. If your target customer is somebody within our age range, or Gen Z or millennial or however, you have to make sure that that's a huge factor in where your marketing is. But keep in mind, if your consumer is older, they have absolutely no idea what TikTok is. So, you're not going to really reach your target audience. So just take that into consideration. And then also your marketing tactics should be creative, fit your target customer, and display strong consideration for expected profitability of this new business line. So really, again, and the judges that are looking at this, we're all in the industry, and we look into everything, and we look at it as something that's applicable into, moving forward in the industry. So we want to see something we haven't seen before. So, really take the time. This is the fun part of this. This is the part where when you want to talk about your marketing campaign and strategy, that you can really be creative and do something outside of the box. So, don't be afraid to really push the envelope on the creativity factor for this one. Okay. And moving on back to Michaela.
Awesome. So for the 6-month financial plan, I think it's super awesome that this year they provided you with a sample, and to be reminded that this is a sample and it's not numbers that you should be pulling exactly from. This is just a sample of how you would like to set up your 6-month financial plan. So starting off, the 6-month financial plan builds off of that fiscal report that you should be looking at for your brand. So specifically, you'll want to look at that fiscal report for the sales revenue per month or by season of how the brand kind of showcases it. And from that fiscal report, you'll be able to build off and kind of see what kind of plan that your campaign will build. So most likely you'd hope that this campaign will bring in more revenue. And so you'll want to increase that revenue for this 6-month financial plan. And you'll want to make sure kind of the months that you choose is something you want to take into account of the revenue. So obviously November, October, months like that is when that revenue is going to go up, because a lot of people are buying for Christmas, for holiday, for Hanukkah and things like that. And then just kind of depending on what you're exactly selling and what time you're selling is when you want to watch that sales percent and increase it or decrease it depending on that month specifically. And for the rest of this 6-month financial plan, I find it really helpful to kind of work backwards. And this, normally the markup percent, Jody or Kim can talk about this too, but that kind of sweet spot is 50 plus or more, just because that's kind of a good spot for a lot of retailers to be in for that markup, and kind of working back from that number is how at least I did for making my 6-month financial plan work and show the progress of how this campaign will actually increase revenue for the brand.
And then just to key in again, Michaela, to add to what Michaela was saying, this is another spot where do bear in mind that judges actually do get out their calculators and run your numbers. So it's really important to actually make sure that everything makes sense and that you did the math correctly, and that the numbers are something that is reasonable and applicable to, again, a real world situation. Just to reiterate, you know, we're looking at this as, you know, somebody we'd bring in as an entry level job that you can just hop right in. So really take the time to make sure that things are accurate, and because the judges do check the numbers to make sure everything's valid and makes sense. So just another a big key point for that. And then Michaela, good point on we always need a 50% margin. We all love that if we could always get it, but yeah, the keystone pricing is really important. So, and then moving on to plans to scale. So this is what's really important about this whole thing. Again, we're really looking to see where you can bring growth to this company. Where are we going to figure out how to, again, as I spoke about the target customer, how can we broaden our consumer base? How can we grab more customers? Is it because it's being more sustainable and socially responsible than it was before? Are you paying more attention to social issues that, you know, you're driving the point home? I mean, I think one good thing that I can bring up now, Levi's has really made a big push in their campaign for a lot of different things about how to be more sustainable. And, you know, when you make it better, you can buy less, something like that commercial that's come out. So Levi's is doing a huge push with that, where they're being more socially conscious. So, you know, how can you drive your sales? How can you drive your profit? How can you broaden your consumer base with different factors to change and grow your companies? And, you know, like having a curbside Santa, you know, how do you make things more unique to your retailer and find that white space that really gives you that benefit and growth? And anybody who wants to chime in on this one, Kim, anybody who wants to kind of chime in on what your plans were, please feel free. But, you know, we're always looking for ways to change and grow and find the white space. And that's the best part about, you know, trying to make your companies grow. So just bear in mind all the different, besides just social media and everything like that. I think it needs to go deeper than that now, because there is an aspect to consumers where, you know, we've all been locked up and sitting and looking at social media and thinking a lot. So I think that consumers are more thoughtful than they've been in the past. And so I think bear that in mind as well, that that's something that you need to focus on.
Great. Well, now we will open this up to our Q&A from the audience. We've had a lot of great questions come in, so thank you all for submitting those. And I will start with the first question that is going to be for Jody and Kim. And this scholar has asked, do you think that the changes made during the pandemic are things that might continue to be used long-term, even after we're fully out of the pandemic? So some of the trends that you've been seeing, some of the changes to the customer experience, how do you feel that some of those will continue, and how do you feel that some of those will revert back to pre-pandemic?
I think from kind of the luxury perspective and in a multi-brand retailer perspective, you know, some of the things that were here to stay, I think, are some of those elements of comfort. And kind of like I was mentioning before, you know, I think we've talked a lot about, will we go back to the office? 5 days a week, and what will meetings look like, and will we be traveling as much as we were before for work? And so I think some of that will all kind of is here to stay, and people have really learned how to be just as efficient from home and working remotely, just as we are here today doing this on Zoom. So I think all of that is here to stay. I think also, though, we are going to be socializing a lot more. So, some of those things will be reverting back to pre-pandemic in terms of assortments. And then in terms of kind of the in-store experience, we'll continue to offer curbside post-pandemic. And I think some of the things that we've noticed that consumers have responded really well to, for example, we added, and this isn't really new, but it's new to Neiman Marcus, is a customer service station in the stores close to our top entrance for returns from online. And so that there's a central location to pay their bill or make a return, and just having a convenient location for that, I think is something that's here to stay, that we did not used to have something like that. And this is kind of something that we really learned, that the customer loved to just like zip in and zip out, and really have something there for their convenience. And so, just having, all about being customer centric. If someone responded well to it during the pandemic, we will certainly keep going with that after, we are out of the woods here.
Yeah, I would echo a lot of what Jody shared. I think from a class and category perspective, I think there are some components of this whole work from home piece that will stick around, as well as I think people are continuing to renovate their homes. They've spent more time in them and their outdoor space. I think our outdoor home product has been incredible still this year, even though people are able to gather more indoors. So I do anticipate, or we anticipate, that will probably continue on. And I think the other piece to think about is market share. So I think we feel great about some of the market share that we've gained as we've acquired some new customers and the real estate opportunities that are out there, as we are primarily brick and mortar at TJX. So, we're looking at capitalizing on some of those opportunities that have opened up for us in this time, and trying to continue to be relevant to the person who likes to, bop into TJ Maxx or Marshall's that's next to their grocery store on a weekly basis. So we hope to continue to maximize that opportunity.
And just to chime in too, I'm one of your vendors, but so, and in the home part. So, and just to chime in on what both of you ladies said, I 100% agree. We have seen an upturn in home big time, and even retailers that we didn't see doing a lot of home have really increased their business. So I think I think that's going to stay too. I think it's also because of, and if you guys agree, that people have had nothing to do besides sit and watch Instagram and TikToks about redecorating. So, I think that people are more in tune to, oh, I can do this easily, and it's fun to kind of ship things out. So I think that they're finding individuality where they're like, oh, I don't have time to do this. And now they're really focusing on that. And as vendors, retailers, we're hoping that trend continues for sure. But we have no way of really knowing. But we're really hoping that it's that way. And I think I agree with everybody that there is that, a push of revenge shopping, or, and then the maximalist trend where and like how you're saying, like more embellished stuff, because it's like, I've been sitting in sweatpants for a year and a half, I'm going to go crazy. So long-winded answer too, I agree. And I do think it's going to stay. And I think that we've developed some really good habits and insight to consumers that I think should stick around.
Thank you all for those helpful insights. Our next question is from a scholar, and she has asked, is choosing a retailer or company that is currently failing and framing our case study as a solution discouraged? So Peter, I don't know if you have any input on that, or any of our other panelists.
I think I'm going to defer to Michaela and Jenny on that one. Thank guys.
I would love to see that. I think picking a retailer, that would be something I would love to see. It's super easy to pick a successful company and be like, oh, this is going to work. But the next brightest person to come into our industry and be somebody who's going to bring something special to us is the person who can come up with a valid and applicable solution to a company that's struggling. So personally, for me, as the author of the prompt and as a judge, seeing something like that, I would be really impressed. So it's definitely not discouraged. I think as long as it's something that you can actually not necessarily prove, but as long as it's something that is realistic, I think it's a great way to go. And I think I think that's part of the creativity that we're looking for. And when you're picking a retailer, and that's kind of what I was talking about in the first slide, where I was saying, when you pick this retailer, it maybe not the most obvious choice is your favorite one that's doing pretty well. That was kind of what I was going after.
Yeah, maybe failing is a slightly harsh term. I think a retailer that's challenged and you're solving for the challenge, I think would be really interesting as a case study suggestion. And as a judge too, I'd like to see that, you know, with some proof of concept.
Right. And I think if you, and Peter, let me know if you agree with me, but I think what would be a good part of that as well is if you do pick somebody who's had more challenges than others, to say why you picked them and why you think that they can be more successful. And, you know, I think that putting that in your case study would be really important. You know, that should be a part of why and why you think they have potential for improvement. Yeah,
I totally agree, Jenny. That'd be very compelling.
Yeah.
As a person, a recipient, I would strongly recommend to choose a brand that is obviously, not failing, but just kind of has more weaknesses. Like I kind of mentioned earlier, that I always built a SWOT analysis, because if this brand has no weaknesses that you can find, then what more are you really kind of contributing as your idea for this brand? So kind of making a list of like what this brand needs and what they're lacking, and kind of figuring out those ideas to turn this brand around is incredibly important and shows your creativity of how you can boost this brand up.
Oh, that's super helpful. The next question is from an applicant who's asked, are applicants required to use the example of the merchandising 6-month plan, or can we use a similar version that we use in our merchandising classes?
Peter, or I can answer, I guess. No, it's just an example. It's not a template. It's just an example. And you feel free to do, you know, your own version. It's actually more encouraged. It's just to show you, just an idea, because, you know, we have more business schools, and not all the schools that are applying are actual fashion focused schools. So we wanted to give an example of what we're looking for. So it's just that it's not a template to use, but just a little helping tool for you.
Is meant to be a guide, but as I'm sure Kim and Jody would say, I mean, you should use something that folks are accustomed to seeing and using, because to Jenny's point, judges will be looking at the numbers and looking at them hard and making hard calculations. So make sure you use something that folks are accustomed to seeing.
I think kind of also bouncing off of that, one of the slides 5.7 through 5.5 through 7 or something like that talks about getting those COGS in the margin plan, and both of those are also important to include in that 6-month financial plan. Without COGS, you can't really get that margin plan to get that revenue, and kind of it all comes together. So your 6-month financial plan may look larger than the sample that there is, and that's totally fine. And it might work better for you when you're putting in those calculations in Excel and kind of combining all that information that you found for that plan.
Thank you all so much. Now this one is from Alexandra. She has asked, how do you research consumer future needs? I found a lot of my sources contradict each other in terms of what consumers will want to wear post-COVID. I'd love to hear possibly Jody and Kim and Robin's perspective on this one.
This is something I think, I don't know, Kim, how you feel about it in your world, but that we're always often asking ourselves this question. And, you know, if we had a crystal ball, it would be so much easier. But it's something I actually have really been working on with our marketing team, specifically to kind of really be able to, you know, we're always looking at past data. And yes, that's very helpful, but it only tells us what happened in the past. But really looking, you know, forward thinking. And sometimes, you know, right now might be a little bit more challenging, but many other countries are typically, I can speak to fashion trends ahead of where the US is. And so that's something that we do in our offices, and trying to work with the marketing team. We have a whole in-house marketing team to really see if that's something that they can help us kind of, you know, pre and during market times to really focus on, you know, what is the consumer looking for? And in the past, we would say, oh, in Asia, and specifically certain areas and cities that are much more advanced than we are. One city that comes to mind that's always more advanced in terms of fashion would be Copenhagen, and what are they looking for? And so that's kind of one way, but definitely agree there are a lot of unreliable sources out there and conflicting information. And I think that's where that art and science come into play. And some of it's just, as a merchant at Neiman Marcus, like gut feeling of if it feels right and being a trained merchant, and some of it is really looking at the data and analytics behind it.
Yeah, I would echo a lot of what you said. From a trend perspective, certainly there's places that we can look for future trend potential, but this is a bit unprecedented as far as what is she going to want post-pandemic. So I think it is, to your point, a great balance of let's look at some facts. What is she telling us already? And then taking some smart risks. Oftentimes we use our marketplace. What are our vendors telling us that they're hearing out there? You know, they give us a lot of great insight as to what's going on and what other retailers are going after. And a lot of times we'll hear the same trend popping up over and over again, and that might be a smart risk to take. And then I would also say within TJX, similarly within our marketing team, we have a consumer insights team, and they're able to get some research from our customer base. So there are customers who are cardholders that we're able to reach out to on a more frequent basis for some data, and they love to respond to surveys. So we will throw some surveys at them and get some response. And we use that a little bit, but it's certainly not the major driving factor for us.
Yeah, and I would just to add to that is that, you know, we do find that our customers are definitely using surveys, right? So it's just more prevalent and just trying to get to the pulse of what the customer is doing. And then there's a lot of reshuffling and revisiting the open to buy and the what kind of goods are available, what kind of stock is available, and those types of things, and shifting quickly. So it's really about having that visibility and making adjustments as quickly as possible. So
one thing I would actually add, thank you for saying that, Robin, because you're jogging my thinking now. At TJX, something that's really unique about our off-price business model is liquidity. So we don't buy a whole season or a whole quarter ahead of time. We are buying product every single week from our vendors. So you may want to consider a plan that offers that flexibility to be able to bob and weave in the moment and change to consumer demand. That way, having that flexibility, you can meet those demands more quickly and change your floor and give her what you give. We say her, give he or she what they're looking for.
Yeah, that's an awesome point too. And one of the things I think that I've realized, like through my career, as I've gotten further and further and time has gone on, we have so many seasons, especially Kim, like what we have, like with TJ Maxx, I mean, we have so many seasons. You know, there's back to school, there's holiday, and all the holidays now, it's like Easter, Valentine's Day, Christmas, yeah, everything. So, and we're getting Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 trans. So there's more seasons than there used to be to address those needs of the different consumers and those different seasonalities. So when you're thinking about your consumer and who you're addressing and how to figure out what she's thinking, I think all these points are really good, because it's not so much of, oh, it's spring, fall, and resort. You know, there's like a bunch of different needs that the consumer is looking for, and there's a lot more changeover. And I think to everybody's point, you know, it's like we look at past, you know, you look at LY sales, you try to figure out what's going on, and then you get your surefire bets. And then, Kim, as you said, then you take thoughtful risks. And I think that that's the only way. I'm sure all of us as you know, in the industry, we take thoughtful risks that we know, okay, this may not work out great, but it's our bet that we have of what we've kind of guessed the consumer is going to do. But, you know, you always kind of balance that out with a core assortment that, you reorder your best sellers from LY, you do your core basic colors and make sure that those are covered. And then you have a few riskier things so that, you know, you're hoping to push her or them. I say her too. So you're like pushing them in that direction, but you know, you have that core in the best sellers so that you don't, make too many strong decisions about what that consumer is going to do. And then each year it just changes a little bit. And, that core or the best sellers from last year dwindle off, and you just keep adjusting.
Thank you all very much for those helpful insights. And we have time for one more quick question. And this is from an applicant who's asked, will there be a presentation like this for each case study discipline? And Peter, would you like to chime in on that?
Sure. Yes, there will be. For one of each of our 4 disciplines. Tonight's was merchandising. There will be a separate session for design and product development, one for marketing analytics, and one for supply chain. we won't have as amazing a panel of esteemed experts as we gathered tonight, but please tune in if you're considering another case study discipline for one of our other sessions. But thank you so much, Jody and Kim. That way, it was really great to hear from you directly, with or without your crystal balls, about how you're navigating successfully. And thanks, Robin, so much for moderating so deftly, as I knew you would. And Michaela and Jenny, for your contributions, really grateful to you. So a very successful session. Thanks to you all, and have a good night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a
Bye.
great
Thank
night.
you.